All right, hello, and welcome back. Preds Power Hour on a what? On a Tuesday? Is that when we're recording this, Brian Bastin? Is this a Tuesday Preds Power Hour?
It is. Just got to be thankful for infrastructure being the way it is. That we're recording this one just a little bit early or late, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're double dipping this week on Friday, so we have like a preview going into the Saturday game. But crazy. No Charlie Burris today, just Brian Bastin and myself. Charlie will be back later on this week. But Brian, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing better than that hockey team that we're about to talk about. That's for sure.
2-4-1. Let me check here. People are going to love this, especially Preds fans, as you're tuning in to this edition of the podcast. Guess what? Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Loss on shootout. Loss. That's been the Preds almost for about 12 days now.
Yeah, they have still yet to win a game. Not
in America.
Yeah,
that's not good. Where do we start, Brian, with this Preds team?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot to unpack. So yeah, as you said, since the San Jose game, in what I think is probably karma for everybody, snatching that low-hanging fruit after those two games and being like, oh, look, the Predators the best team in the NHL before, anybody else had played. They haven't won a single game. They lost in the shootout.
Scored one goal 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And, you look at teams coming into now, the Flyers are a little bit surprising because everybody kind of penciled them in to be just an absolute dumpster fire. But as we found out that they're not as big of a dumpster fire as the Predators are. And, they came in and had a pretty easy time with Nashville. They didn't even give them the chance to blow a lead. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. The team is injuries aren't an issue. Update from the last game there. Mark Borowiecki's back home and is fine. He had a little bit of a scary issue there, a moment there, but everything looks good. So, I mean, it's not an injury issue. These guys are, again, like you look at the roster from last year to this year, there's not a ton of change. And, the two big lineup changes that we've seen have been, positive ones. Ryan McDonough, we can talk about that a little bit, but, Nino Niederreiter, I'm pretty certain he still leads the team in points. I think he's got 4 goals and 2 assists. And so, that's not the issue either. It's not a matter of them having bad players or on paper getting worse players. And it's hard to kind of pinpoint what exactly this issue might be. There are some of the usual suspects when it comes to, what could be the problem with them. So, you've got things like penalties. Obviously, penalties are a huge issue. They are sitting at their 30th in the league in the amount of penalties they've taken. I believe they've taken 38. However, upside is that they have also drawn 35 penalties. Unfortunately, again, though, they've drawn all that. They've gotten to a point where they're doing a great job. But they're not scoring on the power play. I believe their power play percentage right now is sitting at 6.9, which is not
Seems
nice.
Bad.
Yeah, it's not nice. It's not what you want to see. And so, it's funny though, because we talked about last year how they kind of quietly snuck up and had their best season in franchise history, as far as being on the power play, which still wasn't good enough to be, best in the league. But it was nice that they were able to pull that off. I think, let me double check here. I think last season they were sitting at 24.4. So, I mean, that's good. That's what you want. If you're going to be a team that's going to take a lot of penalties and, draw penalties, you want to be able to score on the power play. And that's just something that they have just been completely unable to do, which, you never want that, obviously. And this, that seems to be, that's like a problem that, we haven't seen in quite a while. That was a Laviolette era, issue. But yeah, they've only got 2 power play goals on the year out of 29 opportunities. So
do you see that changing?
Yes, because the team is a little bit too talented, I think, to to continue to be this bad at it. I mean, I know that's kind of hedging my bet a little bit, but I mean, 6.9% is abysmal.
Yeah.
And we're at the early part of the year where they get a couple of games where they get one or two each. That bumps that percentage way up, but it's not what you want to see, especially they're a lot of this relies on them. If they're going to be an aggressive team that's going to take and draw penalties, you've got to be able to capitalize. You got to be a good penalty killing team, which they've been fairly decent. I wouldn't say good by any stretch of imagination. I think they're middle of the league. Actually, no, top 10, 85%. But I will say that they've also had a couple, or they've had a shorthanded goal against. So you don't ever want that. But it's one of those things where it's a matter of is it discipline, is it coaching, what is this, and people, we've asked Coach Hines several times. I almost called him doctor. That's weird.
Dr. Hines does sound right, though.
Yeah, and he was just like, this is something we're focusing on. A coach answer, which for whatever reason is fine, I guess. But that's something that I think it's part of their like a core part of their team, I guess, as far as what they do, which might be an issue. But there's a lot of other things. I wish I could sit there and say that it's penalties. Penalties are killing them, but it's not necessarily just penalties. I mean, UC Saros isn't having the greatest of starts by any means, but it's also not quite as bad. That he's getting exposed to quite a bit of he's facing a lot of shots. The defense hasn't really been super helpful, and he's having to basically play for his life in a lot of these situations when if the Predators get an early lead, the other teams are just ratcheting up the pressure and firing a lot, and he's having to sit there and take all of that, and the defense isn't helping a lot. We've got they're not able to hold on to leads. I think when leading after one, they're 0-1-1, so they've only had 2 games where they have led after the first period and have not won any of them. They're 2-1-1 leading after 2, which those 2 games are or San Jose, again, haven't won any games leading even after 2 or outside of those. And then 1-3-0 when leading after 3. So I mean, even then, I think one of those games again was San Jose. So they're not able to get those leads, to hold on to those leads. They're not scoring. They're not scoring enough. Period. But I mean, they're slow starting. So they're tied for 30th in the league in first period goals. They only have 4. And in the third period, they are at 30th with only 3. So 9 out of their 16 goals so far have been in the second period, which is good, but then they're just completely fading off and not really getting that. And it's curious because you look and you say, okay, obviously there's things like regression. Matt Duchene, Philip Forsberg, they're not going to shoot 23-24% again like they did last season. But I mean, both of those players are shooting at like a respectable 11-12%, which is pretty good for the NHL. That's something that's a number that is much more sustainable than something 20 plus. So I mean, it's a matter, I think, of one. They're a little bit sloppy. You watch passes, there's a lot of issues with completing passes or holding on to the puck. There's a lot of miscommunicated passing, once they're in the offensive zone, and teams have done a really good job of identifying what they can do to stop Nashville in transition. Because again, we've talked about this. They're a forechecking team. They create those turnovers, but they're having so much trouble getting into the zone now, and teams are knowing, we can just post up 3 guys here. We can send 1 guy in to hound the puck carrier. And, there's a 50-50 chance that they're going to disrupt what Nashville's doing, and they're never even going to get started in the offensive zone. So, it's something that they've really got to fix. But I mean, it's looking pretty rough because, some of these teams, none of these teams really they weren't playing Colorado. They weren't playing a Vegas or anything like that. They're playing teams that they should have either beat or should have been competitive with. And they were competitive, and the majority of them, they just couldn't, hold out. And so, it's the question is this a coaching thing? Is this a players thing? And we might not know that by now, but
Charlie knows it. Shout out to Charlie. Charlie knows.
Does know this. Yes. Thursday's the game against St. Louis, and they've got to get something together because on Saturday they've got the Washington Capitals in, and it's if you're John Hines, you don't want to have a bad game playing the coach, the previous coach. You don't want to have that bad game against Peter Laviolette, because this is his year with Washington that he should be turning into a pumpkin like he does with every team. And so, you don't want that. Now, granted, I don't know that there's anybody in Nashville who's sitting there clamoring for Peter Laviolette back. We see every day everybody being like, now you get, you bring Pekka Rinne in as a general manager, or stuff like that. But I mean, have Trotz come back, things like that. But I don't know what that would do at this point, or if Hines did just get a 2-year extension, which, this is professional sport. That doesn't mean anything anymore. But, they're going to be a little bit hesitant to do this unless this, the next week or two just goes bad. I mean, they've got the Canadian road trip coming up. And, if they go on that 5-game road trip and don't come out at least with 3 wins, it's going to be very interesting, because this is a team that kind of positioned themselves a little bit of cap space that they'd be able to maybe make some moves at the deadline if they feel like this is a team that could contend. But, they don't want to have to become sellers, because, the team, the right way the roster is built up, they're not really built to be a seller, because a lot of these guys they've locked up with big money are guys that they're wanting to have, in their future. And some of the other guys they would want to get rid of, no one's going to take. But we're also, we're early into the season. This is something I will say I looked up yesterday. The last time they started with a record like this, with just 2 wins in this many games, ironically enough, was the year that they went to the Cup Finals. So, but they probably don't want to.
You heard it here first, Bryan Bastin. Preds 2023
Yep.
Cup.
Yeah, see, here's what I do is when I say that's absolutely not going to happen, that's when it's going to get me.
Well, you know what helps too, Bryan? I don't know if you've been perusing how the rest of the Western Conference has been going, but it's a dumpster fire everywhere.
Yeah.
Sorry, excuse me. But you look at this division, like, what's nice is the Preds play in the worst division in hockey. That's pretty nice. The Blackhawks playing above expectations right now. I don't think that continues. They have a plus 15 point differential. I don't think that's a thing. But obviously the Avalanche are going to be there. But I mean, the Jets are a 500 team. You have the Wild, who are awful. The Coyotes are awful. Canucks may not ever win a game in the Pacific Division. The Ducks are awful. The Sharks, we talked about that those 2 wins make the Sharks look even worse at this point. They're awful. You go up and down the list. The whole Western Conference right now, I mean, it's outside of the premier contenders. It's just a whole jumbled 500 teams have no idea who they are yet mess. So I don't think it's time to panic if you're a Preds fan.
Yeah, and that's funny. I actually, again, if you are out there listening, that's what Chase just said is something. Now, there should be some panic. Don't get me wrong. But, that's the wonderful thing. For me, I was, a lifetime like football fan, and kind of got into that mindset of you lose a game, you have to deal with it all week. And then, for college football, you lose a game, there goes your chances of, your dreams of anything, in the postseason, basically, Here, it's like you can drop 5 games and still be all right. You've got plenty more. I mean, there's less than 10% of the season that's already been, in the books now. So there's plenty of time. But, there's not a whole lot to sit there and point at and say, yes, they've lost, but look at this. Like, they're going to get better here. Like, yeah, the PK is good. That, the PK numbers would be a top 10 penalty killing team, but they shouldn't have to be a top 10 penalty killing team. They should be able to control some of that and not be, take 38 penalties and draw 35. Like, yeah, it's great that they've drawn that many, but they shouldn't have to take that many in order to get to that point. So it's early, but there's a lot of stuff to look at and try to fix, and it's going to be interesting to see how they plan on addressing it.
We shall see, Bryan. Beyond the box score, though, late period goals, what are they doing in the late periods to score? What are you seeing that is a reason for optimism in that front?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to say optimism. So this is something that, and if you've followed me on Twitter, you've probably seen these. But somebody had made a point, and I've actually been guilty of it as well, that, it's like, oh, the Predators, here they go. They're like, they've got to be the worst team at letting goals come in the last couple minutes of a period, or last couple minutes of the game. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I went and actually, found that information and went to go look at it. And, last season, that was not necessarily the case. Last season, I think they were right there in the middle. Let me see if I can pull that up for you. Um, they were yeah, like they were 16th, tied for 16th, where they had allowed 23 goals in the final 3 minutes of regulation. And then if you look at the last 3 minutes of just every period in regulation, again, 17th with 49. So I mean, they were middle of the road last season. So I thought, okay, maybe they're not as bad as what we all thought. We felt like that there was a lot, but there wasn't. But then I went and looked at this year, and it's steadily gotten worse as the games have gone on. So again, as of this morning, looking at the last minute of any period, they've given up 7 goals. Now this does include empty net goals, but I think that kind of illustrates the point as to, yes, they're still giving those up because they're in a position to where they're behind. They don't have the lead. They're trying to score, and that empty net goal is meaning that they didn't do it. So in the final minutes of any of the periods, the last 3 minutes, they've got 7 goals against, which is 31st. Only Ottawa has more goals, only one more goal against in those final 3 minutes. And then when you look at the final minute of regulation, they're tied for last with Ottawa and Toronto with 4. So in the last 3 minutes of games, they've given up 4 goals, and I believe only 2 of them have been empty netters. So it's something that Terry Crisp he's harped on for years. He said it's how you finish, how you start these periods, because if you're looking, it's 18 minutes into the period, you're tired, the teams are just trying to get off the ice, and then you give up a goal. You go into the locker room feeling even worse. It's hard to kind of get that momentum, do anything like that. And that's, it's been showing. They've been giving up these goals. That's probably why they've, 7 games, they haven't had, they've only had, I think, 2, what is it? I say like 2 games where that they were leading after 1.
I think, yeah, was it 2 or 1?
Yeah, I
It was
think
only
it was,
1.
I believe so. So, I mean, like
Yeah.
that's the issue, is that, this is a team that, yeah, 0-1-1 when
Yeah.
leading after 1. So even when they get a lead, they're not able to protect it, because even if they
Yeah.
start and get that first goal of the game, like they did in a couple times in the last few games, the other team's coming back and scoring on them again. And so that's kind of erasing any chance they had or any advantage. And so, it is a lot of it's curious to see this, because again, it's small sample size for this team, 7 games. Most teams nobody's played more than 7. Actually, I think they get back, San Jose's played 8, but you don't want to see a team there on that. It would be one thing if this was a team that was sitting at 5-2 right now, and they're giving up those late period goals. That's because the other teams are pressing, and they change the score from 5-2 to 5-3 or something like that. That's one thing. But from the way they are, especially knowing, like, we've seen them blow leads several times now. They blew the dreaded 3-1 lead, a couple times already. And so, yeah, this is something where I don't know if it's conditioning. It could be
Mm.
that, that they're just so tired out, or that they're focused on getting off the ice at that point and not closing out this game. And so it's something definitely to really look at, and probably be a little bit worried about, because, if this is a team that hasn't really performed well when they are trailing,
Mhm.
obviously, but when they're leading and they're blowing, they're giving up these leads, and they're giving up goals and allowing the opponents to get back into the game. What is the strong suit? Do they need to do, most teams are either they need to get a big lead and defend it, or they can score a whole bunch to get themselves back in the game. And Nashville is neither one of those things right now. And so, you want to see a lot more. The top 6 has been underwhelming. Forsberg, Duchesne, they've got goals. Niederreiter and Johansson, they've been able to score, but not in the moments. Those are 2 lines that should be able to take over a game at some point, especially when you've got that kind of quality in both lines. One of them should be able to, if you've got a line with Philip Forsberg, Matt Duchesne, and you're down 2 goals, that should be that line that you put out there and you wear them down. If you don't score, then the next line, Johansson, Niederreiter, Tolvanen, whoever it is going to be, they should be able to do it. Teams shouldn't be able to match up against both top lines, but they're making it happen. And it's not, we're not getting a lot out of the offense. Now, obviously defense is a massive issue. There's still a lot of growing pains for that Ekholm McDonough duo. It's going to take time. You've got Ekholm on his opposite side. He's always played on his left until this year. So time will tell if they stick with that. But I mean, he said himself, when I asked him after a game, it takes 20, 30 games to kind of get a good feel for where you're at. But starting to look at how the games have been going. They may not have 20, 30 games to get that figured out. They may have to figure something else out and get, Matthias Ekholm, back with maybe Dante Fabro or something or Alex Carrier, just to kind of get an idea of, get them back to where they're supposed to play and get some better defense. Cause it's not, what is the hallmark of this team? Is it, defense and goaltending and all of that. And it's
I
just
know what it is, Brian.
What's that?
The Mustard Cat. The Mustard Cat is back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about the Mustard Cats. So
I'm pro Mustard Cat, and I'm pro
sure.
these uniforms. They're good uniforms. There was a tweet in pushing for the purple navy blue ones to come back too. Bad take. Those don't look good.
I will say that you may be one of the very first people I've heard that, yes, people are split on what the Mustard Cats themselves, but most people are like, but we'd rather have it on the Navy.
No, can't do it. Out of here. Get that guy out of here. No, can't do it. No, well, Mustard Cat is the way to go. The Mustard Cat logo is great. Everything about it's great.
Yeah, I'm gonna full disclosure. I hate the Mustard Cat.
Oh no, Brian!
But I will say this:
how can you be so wrong on a Tuesday afternoon?
I'm wrong every day of the week. It doesn't matter. But
well, yes, I mean I will say some Tennessee doubt. Tennessee Volunteers doubt week over week. Brian in my DMs like, are you sure? What am I doing? Stick with me, Brian. Stick with me.
I don't know about with these uniforms. I mean, so the thing is they're good, and I think part of the reason why they don't resonate with me is because, again, I wasn't around for the Mustard Cat days, so it's great. I mean, people I think maybe look at them the same way I look at a starter jacket now. You're like, those things were great, those were awesome. Were they the best, and would I want to buy one right now? I don't know, but like, I'm glad the color's not there because God, that color is god awful. But it's just they could have done more, I think, and I think maybe I'm spoiled because they had, the perfect hockey sweater like designed for them a couple years back for the Winter Classic. I mean, there is nothing about that jersey that is wrong for me. I think it's the best jersey that this team has ever had, and it's one of the best jerseys that any team has ever had in the NHL, just because it just looked so good. It was, it's not a bunch of, they don't have to have yellow for everything. They don't have to have gold for everything. And it's fine. They're much better than the Stadium Series ones. Those ones that say Smashville on the front, I can't stand those. The reverse retros from last year were fine. I just, when you look at pictures, and you can see like any sport, like Tennessee, you look at the old Tennessee jerseys in the 90s with Al Wilson and those guys, a lot of them had that cutoff, and it was the huge, massive numbers and the huge neck rolls, which was cool. It's a bygone era. It's really cool look. It'd be cool if they did it once or twice. But with these, it's like, you can still do something that's like supposed to be retro for a 20-something-year-old team and improve on it. They just kind of slapped the Mustard Cat logo on there and kind of kept everything else. And, and when it looks really 90s, like that font that they used to have, again, it's not that good. Like it was good back then, but again, this is me.
A retro jersey.
My point being is I know I'm in the minority with my opinion, and so I haven't been arguing it too much because I know I'm just going to get shouted down, which
why are you yelling at me? I'm right. You're the
no, I'm not even going to go that way because I recognize it's probably just I don't have the history on it, but I just can't stand them. Maybe it'll grow on me. They're better than the Stadium Series. They're better than the last reverse retros. Maybe they'll be great. They'd be even better if I can read the numbers well from the press box. That would be even better, and I could change my mind. But
can they bring in a Mustard Cat? By the way, can we get a Mustard Cat for a retro night?
Maybe, yeah, maybe we could.
You have cats. I don't know. Is it okay to put mustard on a cat? A little bit of mustard, and then
I've got one that's in this house right now that I'm completely willing to put whatever on it because he's been a complete pest. So I'm kidding, by the way. But no, I mean, and so yeah, they're fine though. I mean, like the fan base like loves them. Outside the fan base, not so much, but that's fine. It's not for the other fans. I will say that at least it's not Chicago and Detroit's where it was just kind of lines and the name and red. But I mean, some of the teams had some really, really great ones. And, you look at like, the Islanders, I love
those
theirs.
Are good.
Vegas.
I like the Sabres. Is that weird?
Oh, the Sabres ones are great. They're fantastic.
Okay. I think they're better than their current ones. Their current ones are just boring. There's not a lot there.
I like it when they wear those where it's like all white.
You can't even
color. Perfect. You got Vegas.
Yeah,
Vegas's uniforms, they glow in the dark for some reason. But that's Vegas. They're
well, Vegas,
tacky.
you
They
got to
took
do it.
tacky from Nashville and improved
Mm,
upon it. So I mean, there's some good ones out there. It's just not for me. But it did appease the fan base, and I think that's good. If a team does something that the fans want, then good. You can't do it just because I'm being cranky about it. It's not reason. But speaking of these jerseys, though, I did have another. I'm gonna start asking you guys questions every week, and since Charlie's not here, this is all on you,
mm.
buddy. But speaking
Uh-oh.
of these jerseys, and we talked about it,
Is this the trivia question?
it is.
Okay.
So I talked about the Winter Classic jerseys, reverse retro, which the Winter Classic jerseys actually could be a fine candidate in the future for reverse retro because the Winter Classic jerseys were based off of a hockey team that was based here in Nashville. Chase, what was the name of that team that they got the uniform design from for the Winter Classic last year or 2 years ago?
Sounds?
The hockey team. It's
Oh, I thought we were
prior to the
going off.
Preds.
Okay. You didn't spell. Okay. Dude, I have no idea.
That's all right. It didn't affect you. So that was see that when I was telling you about the cat. Yeah, that may actually happen here soon. Yeah, no. So that team, they did the Dixie Flyers
YouTube.com/Chase
actually.
Thomas Podcast for that sound.
Yeah. So this is the Dixie Flyers. That was the team here in
Dixie
Nashville.
Flyers.
Yeah, I mean
A lot of Dixie this week. Folks getting mad about Tennessee playing Dixie, all that. Yeah, a lot of Dixie anger.
Yeah, well, you got to win then if you don't want us to play it.
Dixie Flyers. The
Yeah.
Nashville Dixie Flyers.
It's old
Those
team.
look good though.
Yeah, and that's I mean it was they were down in 62 to 71 in
Yeah.
EHL. I mean, not a great team by any stretch of they won two they won two of their championships in 65 and 66. But
Yeah.
not around for a whole long time, but the uniforms were great and Nashville did an excellent job in picking that design because it's sometimes
those are good.
yeah, and so that's again a little bit of history. This is one of those things where I'm not going to ask you like which player from 20 years ago did this or that, but these are questions that you guys could have a decent chance. I wonder if Charlie would have known. I'll have to ask him. I'll have to ask him maybe on Friday. We'll ask him, give him a bonus. So, but yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's just a cool piece of history. The reverse retro. I'm glad they're doing it, but I do want everybody to remember that while we're all oohing and awing and fawning over these things, this is just the way the NHL is just emptying your wallet because these things are not cheap at all. Like, $250 for a jersey they're fantastic when you buy them. Quality is amazing, but that's a lot. That's not something you can sit there and just be like, you go to a game and then you're like, hey, mom or dad, can you buy me a jersey? You get it like under 100, maybe, but 250, no. So,
well, we'll see. We shall see. The last thing, Dave Poile, who has been the GM since the Bush administration here in Nashville, 3,000th game as NHL GM against the Flyers on Saturday.
Yeah. So Poile, yeah, it's 3,000. I'm sure that he would have liked that game to go a little bit better. He is the winningest GM in NHL history. His teams have accrued more points than anybody else. But again, there's one thing missing. It's like we talk about Dan Marino, things like that. Just no ring. All that time with Washington and Nashville. And funnily enough, if you look at it, his point percentage for both those teams is almost exactly the same. I believe it's like 55.8 and 55.9. Had Nashville won, I think 4 or 3 out of those games that they lost, 3 out of those 5 that they lost, he actually his point percentage would be higher with Nashville than it was with Washington. That's how close it is. But yeah, I mean, it's this Predators team isn't where it is without David Poile. We can all acknowledge that. He did a lot of great things. Again, like I still think that Subban trade was what not only kind of kicked this team into being a team that was good enough to make it to Stanley Cup Finals, but when you want to get a team, you want to try to sell a team to the rest of the NHL, the other fan bases. And yeah, Nashville has the reputation of being a great place to come see a game. But when you can get a guy like PK Subban in there, where you're replacing, a guy that everybody loves in Shea Weber, but he's kind of the face of this team. He's the guy who's going to get out there and talk because, famously hockey players aren't the most personable, like lively guys out there, which is fine. But when you get a guy like PK Subban, who is, he's fun to watch. He's outspoken. off the ice. He's a great person as far as, donating all that money to the Montreal Children's Hospital, things like that. That's one of those things. And so, Poile made that happen, in that deal. And, he's also got Philip Forsberg from the Capitals, things like that. Yeah, there's a lot of things that he hasn't done right. We're just going to be paying Kyle Turris $2 million a year for like the next 6 years, things like that. But it comes down to the fact that, he still hasn't won a cup. It's been, his name has been kind of on the hot seat for as long as I've been covering him. And you haven't seen much changes. They're like, how are they going to address it? Are they going to go all in at the deadline? Are they going to sell? And that's the one thing that he hasn't done yet, has gone all in on, all right, this team's going to rebuild, because again, like we've said before, he's probably knows that doesn't have too much more
it's
time.
not happening. The rebuild's not happening.
Yeah. And so, for better or for worse, and again, looking at the team this year, you wouldn't have thought that a rebuild was necessary in the offseason, but jury's still out on that. So it's interesting. You've got this guy. He's the only guy who's been here in Nashville for so long. Winningest GM, that does mean something. Whether that means that he's just been there the longest or not, I don't know. But that's something that you can't put past there. I mean, I think that he's in the Hall of Fame, first ballot immediately. He's got a GM of the Year award. But it's you gotta, is this is the last, he hit this milestone, and there's really, he's not making another 1,000 games. So, what, you've only got one milestone left, and that's the one that matters. So
yeah,
will it happen before he steps down? I don't know. The way the team looks right now, I wouldn't think so, unless some things turn around and change. But even if this team was performing at a higher level, kind of like they were mid-season last year, I still don't see him being a team that's going to sit there and run, make a run in the playoffs all the way to the finals. So, he's got to be looking and thinking, his time to sit there and go, no, like I can stay and do this for another couple years. Let's get this team better, and it not happen. That leash only goes so far, especially with, the big changes in the ownership group that are coming with Haslam. So we'll have to see. But it's, I'm glad they got to celebrate that. Good for him. Kind of feels indicative of how his career has been the last few years, to come in there and get beat by what was supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. But yeah,
there you go. Bryan Bastin, what can the good folks check out from you over on the Forecheck this week?
Yeah, so again, I'll be at the game on Thursday against St. Louis. It's a Central Division rival. It's going to be huge. I'll probably have some stuff written up about that. We've got, Renegades of Puck again after every game, where we're doing we'll make those recordings. They'll be available at 7:00 in the morning, both in video form and podcast. So look out for those. And yeah, it's an interesting time right now over at on the Forecheck. We're going to be getting some new people in. We got a lot of new blood, so that'll be really fun to see. Some people I'm really, really excited about to have on the team, actually. And yeah, and it's good. And I do want to congratulate, Charlie's not here, but congratulate Charlie and, Sean now over there at A to Z Sports. They won a pretty big award for a media outlet there yesterday for A to Z Sports. So congratulations to them. They deserve it. They do a lot of great stuff. So yeah, that's, just covering hockey.
Man, there you go. Well, hopefully we have a win to talk about on Friday's show. Fingers crossed on that one,
Right.
But we shall see. We shall see. Bryan Bastin, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you in a couple days.
Yeah, see you on Friday.